Next up, we've heard about national. We're now going to hear about Turnpike initiatives. With us is Charles Buchanan, Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. He's Assistant Roadway Engineer and Manager for the Turnpike. He's been around the industry for 19 plus years, and he's a Penn State grad. They got a little bit of a wrestling team going on up there, don't they? Yeah. I mean, Chuck?
Thank you. So I want to start off with thanking John Becker and the Concrete Association for allowing the Turnpike to present today. As I start the presentation, I want to touch on a couple of events and some history of the Turnpike and kind of see how that mends into innovation with the concrete industry. So last October, or October 1st, we celebrated our 76th anniversary of the Turnpike, officially entered service in 1940, exhibiting new concepts in superhighway design and demonstrating that revenue bonds were a way to finance a toll road. Turnpike planners originally predicted that 1.3 million vehicles would travel the Turnpike in a year, and early actual traffic was 2.4 million. Sometimes as many as 10,000 vehicles a day were traveling the original Turnpike. The original Turnpike was from Irwin to Carlisle, 160 miles, and now we have over 550 miles that we own and maintain. We were America's first superhighway, and we continue to work very hard to maintaining and transforming that into tomorrow's superhighway. And like the concrete industry, we've evolved over the years. So in 1939, it was all form work, and now we're looking at all slip line paving. I like this one. I mean, could you imagine an inspector allowing, what, 4 different guys with shovels moving concrete around in today's industry versus material being transferred directly into a vehicle for placement? Or that's an actual picture from the Turnpike paving operation in 1939 versus what we did in 2014 with a total reconstruction in concrete. How about a finisher? Really? That hasn't changed that much, in my opinion. But how about an old profilogram versus an ultralight profiler today? There's a big difference in technology and innovation over the last 76 years. But opening the traffic, 1940 versus 2014 with a concrete pavement. The big difference you can see there is the amount of trucks that the Turnpike saw in 1939 versus we see today. So customer service, you know, has always been one of the driving points with the Pennsylvania Turnpike. It's clear with our MPT patterns and the time sequence that we allow contractors to set those patterns. But it's through the investment in our capital plan that we're trying to build this bridge to zero fatalities. So the question is, what is our capital plan? Well, here's some quick numbers on where our capital plan has been for the last couple of years and where we're projecting it to go. So the largest highway program we've had in our history was fiscal year 16 at $660 million. For those of you that attended APC back in the fall, Brad Heigl, our chief engineer, touched on this in more detail, so I'm not going to drive down into too much. But the independent program down there at $323 million, that's our Southern Beltway, our Monfayette. That's very actively funded through the motor vehicle, or through the oil franchise money from Act 89. And I'll provide a little more detail on that independent program later in the program. But you can see we have dropped a little bit to $600 million in fiscal year 17 that we're in right now. Fiscal year 18 drops a little bit more. So previous capital plans by fiscal year 15, well, $560 million, fiscal year 16, $660 million. You can see how the capital plan has grown over the last 5 years. So there's a real investment in the turnpike from our capital plan. But you can kind of see there was a big jump right after 2004. That's when we did a fairly large toll increase. It took about 2 years to see that money really take off into our total reconstruction programs. Then we did another enhanced capital plan in 2012, and you can kind of see there's another spike, basically took us from $200 million to $600 million a year in funding. The current plan is the highest in commission history, but it's been flatlined for the next 10 years. So where are we going with in the future? In 2022, our payments to PennDOT are supposed to decrease $450 million a year right now to $50 million a year in 22 by Act 89. But there's some concern at the commission that this isn't actually going to sunset. So where you want to be in a good position to react if that stays at 450 or doesn't go to 50 million. So that's the reason that we are flatlining our capital plan from fiscal year 17 out. So our fiscal year 17 capital plan as it is now, the highway program competes against all the other programs within the commission, but we are by far the largest program with almost 86% of the total funding. So how does that break down into individual programs? The big one is our total reconstruction, followed by our interchange program, and then roadway and bridge, followed by miscellaneous and our cashless toll conversion. So where do we stand today? Well, as of last month, we have 94 active construction contracts, which have 41 different contractors performing those contracts. A total value of $1.96 billion out in construction, physically in construction or awarded to go to construction, with another 552 remaining for this fiscal year. It's a pretty big number. So with that program, how do you achieve quality work? And one way is through TQI, the Transportation Quality Initiative. So that we're very engaged, and we continue to focus on TQI along with John Becker and the concrete industry. We fully agree that the effort that goes into this program and what comes out of TQI is the way that quality transportation projects are going to be implemented across the state. So let's talk about some concrete pavement. So back in 2014, the big pilot program that everyone was watching was total reconstruction of milepost 206 to 210 in concrete, which was our first concrete pavement that we did in total reconstruction. Also, we have our Southern Beltway, Route 22 to I-79. There are 7 sections in design. 2 have been bid. 5 more will be bid over the next 13 months. So let's touch a little bit more on our 206 to 210 project. Roughly 4.03 miles, about $49 million. What's that break down to? About $12 million a mile, or $2 million a lane mile. But what do we get out of that? So it's been finished, traffic's running on it for second year now. So key points that we got out of from this project that we continue to monitor and do continue to discuss internally, location of the right pavement joint. This just came up yesterday again internally. Our pavement joint is 2 feet into the right lane or the center lane. The ride quality, longitudinal tining, long-term maintenance of this pavement, and construction issues that came up that we're still discussing. So here's a rough layout of what that project was. And you can see there's 3 sets of single span structures that equally split this project into 4 pieces. In addition, there were 4 culvert extensions, a steel plate arch, a precast box, and arch culverts, and a cast in place arch. So sequencing of the work was really essential. When you break in all your bridge structures and your culverts, you have to account for all your gaps for your EPOs, your contractor access. So you have to be aware that when you're paving concrete, you're going to occupy 2 lanes And when you're only building 2 lanes at a time, this comes into a real problem. You also have your post-pavement restrictions, your cure time, your sawing and sealing. You also have to consider our median drainage was designed very shallow, so we couldn't run in the median until it was paved, which caused construction issues. Construction staging is always on the mind. When string lines are used for grade control and dowel baskets are placed every 15 feet, and you're working in a 29-foot work area, that gets pretty tight. So your access for your equipment drives a lot of this. One way they came up was we designed that 14-foot center lane, or 14-foot right lane, next to our 12-foot shoulder. So where this really comes into play is you have to maintain very tight edge slump on that 14-foot lane. All these elements drive to one thing, and that's workmanship. The workmanship provided by the finishing crew is absolutely key, but this job for them gets more complicated. When you only have 3-foot buffer area from the edge of your concrete to the edge of your adjacent travel lanes, that gets very difficult for crews to stand in there and perform adequate work. But reaching the desired RRI numbers was also a challenge for us. The preliminary numbers were in the 80s, probably slightly inflated, you know. It's never a perfectly clean surface. You have those bumps, you have those pebbles that are still out there. But it's probably about 80% that we have to grind, which was probably a significantly higher number than the contractor anticipated having to grind. But once we ground it, we got the numbers down into the 60s. A lot more issues came up with the contractor's equipment. Now, it's tried and true equipment, but it's not today's technology. It's not all electronic, but being a public agency, we have to kind of hedge our bets. You know, you can't write the specs so tight that we exclude certain companies because they don't have the equipment that we want to see used, but you need to have a cost-effective project. So all in all, what came out of that is it was a very much a more difficult project than a typical total reconstruction for us. But we're hoping is the payoff down the line from placing concrete out here will help with the life cycle of this section. So let's go from the south central region of the state to the southwest and talk about some Southern Beltway. The total construction cost for the entire 13 miles of the US 22 to I-79 is estimated over $710 million. The dual bridges at US 22 have been completed since the fall of 2015. We've bid 2 major roadway contracts valued just about $182 million. Again, 5 more major roadway contracts coming out over the next 13 months. And we intend to have the entire 13-mile section of the Southern Beltway open in late 2019 with the finished work in 2020. So I don't know about you, but I kind of hate this slide. It's very difficult to read, but it shows the best picture of all the design sections from Route 22 up in the upper left to I-79 in the lower right. So the first section of the Southern Beltway was bid back in November, and Independence was the low bid, as we have approximately 190,000 square yards of plain cement concrete pavement and shoulders. The second section was bid in December, and Fay was the low bid. We have about 123,000 square yards of concrete pavement in this section. So the next 5 sections you can see here, second quarter for 2 sections, a third quarter, and a fourth quarter. We throw in a new maintenance facility down for Southern Beltway to maintain this. We bring in our last section in the first quarter of 2018 for bid, and then we build a signing contract which covers the entire 13-mile corridor in the first quarter of 18. So this is what our current 6-quarter lighting schedule has us at. So the Southern Beltway specifications, this was touched on a little bit earlier. I mean, we do have our long life pavement specification. We do have a Portland cement concrete training spec, and we have a revision to section 507 for ride incentives. These did come out of TQI in CPQI for improved quality down here. So there is the new long life specification that's being used. It's not a special provision. It is a special provision. It's not straight Section 530 for those that, and that's going to be the way it is for all the other 5 sections that are out there to be coming. Probably the big thing down here is the Portland Cement training program, commonly referred to as just-in-time training. So it is a formal class for contractors, commission employees, and all the agents for both sides. It's associated with the construction or rehabilitation of Portland Cement pavements. So contractors is to use a recognized pavement or the recognized concrete pavement best practices and guidance documents that are out there for training materials in this class. They are to provide the instructors experienced in specified pavement specifications, construction methods, materials, testing, and knowledge of the best practices. They are to be led by a professional engineer in the state of Pennsylvania. They cannot be an employee of the commission or the contractor, and they have to provide the facility to hold this training. So who's required to go? I mean, representing the contractor, the paving superintendent, the foreman, the mechanic, the operators, paving crew, the plant technicians, solid and sealing representatives, pretty much everyone that you can think that is involved in the concrete paving aspect from the contractor is required to go. Representing the commission, the project engineer, the assistant engineer, the materials manager, the main office pavement and construction staff, and the key inspection. So again, everyone that is integral to the actual paving operations or the material testing and approval is required to attend this training. So what is it? Well, it's going to be a 4 to 6 hour class. Sessions have to be approved no more than a month prior to the start of the concrete work, and it has to cover all the aspects of the pavement specification, work methods, equipment, materials that are proposed for the actual job. And then you have to have a 2 hour follow-up session approximately 3 work days after your construction commences with placing your concrete to make sure that we are following those best management practices. Additional requirements. See, clear specs, right? 2 hour session conducted prior to a new construction season or for those that weren't involved in the prior season or new employees. All sessions have to be conducted during normal work hours, and they can be part of the pre-paving meeting or a regular scheduled project meeting. How is it paid? We pay for 75% of it at the conclusion of the pre-construction and the initial follow-up, and 25% gets paid in the following season after the refresher course. So where are we going with the ride quality and the pavement incentive? So this is a special provision to replace 507.4, which is the measurement and payment, and it provides incentives for, or a higher pay scale for lots that have 0 corrective action. And this is probably the big thing for us is if you place a lot that requires 0 corrective action, we're going to pay you more. So this is the updated table. Again, it does just revise 504 or 507.4. So you can kind of see for a type 1, type 2, Schedule C versus Schedule U. U is no corrective action. C has a lots that require corrective action. So you can see the increase in the incentive payment if you have a lot that has no corrective actions. Defective lots may still stay in place as long as it's approved by the assistant chief and the contractor accepts a $4,000 downward payment or a rebate to the commission. So that's kind of where the Turnpike is with concrete initiatives and the history of us. So, any questions? Thank you.